It is official. Aaron Rodgers is now a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers. What that means for the Steelers now in 2025, and what can we expect from Rodgers? Tons of other NFL news as well on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Love and appreciate all of our everydayers out there. Thanks for hanging out with us. And if you're new to the program, welcome. Please think about hitting that subscribe button. I know even a lot of everydayers aren't subscribed up. You got Matt choking about the fact that not everybody is subscribed and hangs out with us every day. So subscribe, tell a friend, and help us with that algorithm on your podcast platforms, of course, YouTube and everywhere you listen to your podcasts. And get your mailbag questions in for next week's NFL mailbag, either on Twitter or on the YouTube comments. And it's a big one today, Matt. I want to get into Aaron Rodgers and everything that's involved there in the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I do want to let the listeners know that today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. It's been expected. And we have talked about how this is clearly going to happen, but then it kept going a little bit longer. And it's like, is it really going to happen? And it has now officially happened. OTAs close up. Mandatory mini camps next week. Aaron Rodgers flying in today to Pittsburgh to become a member of the Pittsburgh Steelers on a 1-year contract. This is a 1-year deal for Aaron Rodgers, presumably the final year of a Hall of Fame career for Aaron Rodgers. So take me through this, Matt. You cover the Steelers every day. You're around the building. I know there was a confidence that this was going to happen. Take me through the timeline, why this is happening now, and we got to talk a lot about Rodgers and who he even is at this point in his career and what to expect from this version of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, it's been an eventful 24 hours for me, give or take. You know, I mean, I left the final OTA from the Steeler facility, walked right past Gabe Davis while he was there on his visit, and got in the car. And shortly after I got home, recorded a quick podcast, and you and I were live on the air with Locked On Cleveland folks, and all of a sudden, there, boom, Rodgers is a Steeler, and my phone's blowing up like crazy while we're trying to record. And then, you know, kind of a sentimental moment, I go to my oldest kid's high school graduation last night, sitting there in the rain doing that. And today's my 52nd birthday. And my phone has been on fire for 24 hours, not to wish me happy birthday, but about Rodgers. That's absolutely for sure, you know?
Your son was like, his life was like on the Aaron Rodgers timeline, right? Like,
yeah. He's
probably born about the time that Aaron Rodgers declared his candidacy for the NFL draft out of Cal.
And what's funny is I was in the Browns war room that year that he came out. So, I mean, that was my first year, my only year in the league, and been in media ever since. So that was Rodgers, it's just quite a while ago.
That was with Braylon Edwards, right?
Braylon was our pick at 3. But we liked Rodgers more than Smith, who went 1.
Right. A lot of teams did. There was a lot of talk about Gruden was the Bucks, and Gruden was up there. There were talks that he liked both quarterbacks. They ended up going like Cadillac Williams, I think.
Yeah, that was Cadillac.
Right.
That was the Ronnie Brown, Benson. All those guys went like the top 5 or 6.
What a time, man. Aaron Rodgers falling through. And you look back and it's like, man, what were these teams thinking? Every single team passed on a Hall of Fame quarterback. You don't see that very often. This day and age, not a lot of running backs going ahead of quarterbacks. And in fact, it's the opposite. You're seeing those 2nd and 3rd round graded quarterbacks even sneaking into the 1st round a lot of times. And so teams don't want to repeat that. They don't want to be the team. They don't want to be one of the 23 teams in the 1st round that passed on Aaron Rodgers, including the Niners, who actually drafted another quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, With the Browns, we thought we were set. We got Jeff Garcia. You know, we thought we were in good shape. End of his career. You know, we don't need anybody. And we drafted Luke McCown the year before I got there. We had a lot of hope for him. There's no reason to take Rodgers. You know.
Oh man, the Browns are so amazing. It's awesome. We talked to Spencer German. You got to listen to that podcast from yesterday if you haven't.
Yeah.
And, the news broke of Aaron Rodgers when we were, and actually it was like minutes after I was like kind of digging the Steelers about how they don't have any good quarterbacks, and the Browns quarterback room is better. And then all of a sudden, oh, here's the news. He actually do finally have that other quarterback that we expected in Aaron Rodgers. And I do want to talk about what the expectations are now in the AFC North and otherwise with the Steelers and Aaron Rodgers. So worst kept secret that this was clearly okay. And now there's some reporting that Mike Tomlin was okay with the timeline, and Rodgers, you know, I think a lot of it was because of last year with the Jets, and Rodgers just didn't want to be around. So he didn't want to sign and then not be at the voluntary stuff. And so they picked.
That's 100% it, in my opinion. No one's told me that, but he basically signed 5 minutes after OTAs ended.
Right.
Yeah. You know, like, I'm like, this is very. They probably knew this was the day it was going to happen 2 months ago, and how much money and all that stuff. You know,
and if you
had the playbook,
if you just look at the Steelers offseason, it would be absolutely insane if this wasn't.
If it wasn't in the book,
if it wasn't a guarantee that this was going to be happening at some point.
Exactly. And even like interviews with the owner and coaches and just being around these last couple months, just the way they phrase things. And sometimes I'd even let it slip. Like, well, you know, when someone else gets here, we'll be okay. Like just little things like that, you know what I mean? So I'm not shocked at all that he's a Pittsburgh Steeler. And I'm pretty excited about it, to be honest with you. And I've done a lot of Rodgers homework, as you can imagine, and he's not what he used to be. And I do have some concerns about can his body at this age hold up to 17 plus games and all that stuff. But he did play all 17 last year. And frankly, the second half of the season was much better than the first. I mean, he was coming off a massive injury. He got Devontae Adams. I think he got a better feel for a badly designed offense. And I don't know how much he had to do with that or not. But he doesn't love getting hit at this stage of his career, kind of like late career Roethlisberger. But he can still throw it. And he's still really, really good from the neck up. And the biggest thing I've been telling people, for whatever reason, people around here are like, man, well, he should have signed with, you know, like they're down on him. Like, because he is a polarizing personality. He has some political stuff. And why didn't you sign 2 months ago? I'm like, they already knew, guys, you know, but I've been telling them, I can almost promise, or I'll be shocked if he's not clearly the best quarterback they've had since Ben's elbow injury. And that's kind of enticing to me, you know?
And watching a little bit more Aaron Rodgers, and it's not an arm thing.
No.
You don't really know exactly where his mind is. Maybe he's not quite as honed in playing in the same offense for the, you know, whatever straight year, which is not, it's not as helpful. You're not going to be as sharp, as someone who's playing in the same offense for the 10th straight year or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
And so there's that aspect of it, but I'm not.
Let me throw one thing in there though, BP, that people might not connect these dots, but Arthur Smith was in Tennessee when LaFleur was the offensive coordinator. LaFleur goes to Green Bay to become the head guy and wants to take Arthur with him. Vrabel says, no, I'll make you the offensive coordinator here. I don't want to lose you. Mm-hmm. So, and then LaFleur and Rodgers obviously were together, you know, so like there are some dots there in terms of scheme and what they want to do that make a little more sense than you might think. Because there's a ton of people would ask me like, he doesn't fit Arthur Smith's offense. You know, he doesn't want to run the ball. I'm like, it's a lot like how he finished his career in Green Bay. And
terminology,
and all that
very
stuff.
Very familiar for him as well, which helps everybody get on the same page a lot quicker. So there's that. And I'm not worried about the arm at all. He made some great throws last year. He even made some of his classic, like, I'm running left, I'm going to throw the ball back right, quick stuff, you know, sidearm stuff. So he's got a lot of that. If you're worried about it's over for Aaron Rodgers or that he's washed, it's because of his legs. He had he had an Achilles injury. He's not moving around as well. Doesn't want to get hit. Maybe getting rid of the ball too fast, changing some of the decisions he would be making versus what he would have made 5 years ago. That's the aspect of Aaron Rodgers that still remains to be seen. And look, I'm a similar age. I'm actually a couple years older than Aaron Rodgers. I was messing around in Chico, California, going to Butte Community College. At the same time, I might have crossed paths with Aaron Rodgers. I could have sat next to him in the class. I had
would never know.
Yeah. It's so funny. And I know how the body ages, and I'm not a world-class athlete. I'm not a Hall of Fame path human being, right? But I still play a lot of sports, and I try to. And the body sometimes says, "No, we're not doing it, man." And if we're going to do it, it's certainly not going to be anything like it used to be, even just a couple of years ago. So that's a reality of just being a human being and the timeline that Aaron Rodgers is on in his 40s in the NFL.
Those are basically my three concerns. I mean, he does not want to get hit. It's kind of like Ben at the end too. Like balls coming out quick, the dump offs, things like that. Does he get disengaged mentally at some point and be like, this isn't for me? And his last 2 years as a full-time starter, last year and his last year in Green Bay, he threw a lot more picks than he usually does. I mean, he has him and Mahomes are number 1 and 2 with touchdown to interception ratio all time. Well, he had, more than he did back in the past of turning the ball over.
So that's Aaron Rodgers. He is a Steeler. We'll hear from him, and I'm sure there's going to be an official press conference about all of this. But now we've got to shift to the team. What does this mean for the Steelers? What does this mean for expectations in Pittsburgh? There's some news around the NFL. Could there be another pass catcher on their way to join Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh? Next. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Monarch Money. And I know this has happened to me, and I'm sure it's happened to you. You ever check your bank account and you wonder, where did all of the money go between dining out, online shopping, entertainment? It's so easy to lose track, and that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Know what's going on in your bank accounts, all of your accounts. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money. Start building wealth. Love the collaboration. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without the stress, check all your finances, track spending, and long-term goal planning. Budget smarter and take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, you plug in a future Hall of Fame, a no doubt Hall of Fame quarterback. Even in his 40s, it's a better look now. As I'm paraphrasing you from just a few minutes ago, it's the best quarterback situation that the Steelers have had since Ben Roethlisberger was good.
Right.
Yeah. And probably better than late career Ben Roethlisberger.
I think so. Yeah, I'm expecting that.
Yeah.
And they've won a lot of games with these crappy quarterbacks in between,
Right.
Not enough. But
if you take a 500 team, but the Jets thought the same thing. The Jets thought they had a defense they're going to plug in this Hall of Fame quarterback. Now, one year was a torn Achilles on the first play, and then the next year it just didn't quite work out for them. So I ask you, what's the expectations for the Steelers, and why would it work out better this year, a year older for Aaron Rodgers, than it did last year in New York?
Because the organizations couldn't be any more different. And one of them has 6 trophies you walk past every day, and one of them has weird ownership, coaches, lack of stability. Cam Hayward's not in the locker room. The Walter Payton Man of the Year. There's not a Tomlin. There's not a Rooney. I mean, I think that's really the difference. And one team always wins 8 to 10 games, and the other one doesn't. And plus Pittsburgh's a much different city than the Big Apple, and the focus too.
Yeah, the focus. Another year removed physically, even though he's a year older. Does that get counteracted by just another year removed from the Achilles too?
Yeah, and I quoted some stats. You know how they do like the mile per hour stuff, and it's not like he's blazing fast at this point, but almost all of his fastest movements last year were in the second half of the season. And to me, for an older guy, that just means he's getting further and further away from the injury. You know what I mean?
Right.
So his best football is at the end of the year. So it wasn't a wear and tear thing. I think it was getting away from the injury and adding Adams at the trade deadline.
And I think it's important at this stage, and not. I think Rodgers needed to be humbled a little bit potentially.
Yeah.
And just like, not even as him being a villain, but just that, like, look, we you're going to join our program.
Right. You're not bringing Randall Cobb with you. Right. Yeah.
I don't want to see Alan Lazard signed by the Steelers. Right. This isn't quasi GM and head coach Aaron Rodgers. This is Aaron Rodgers, quarterback of a team that is being coached by other people, and he's going to be the quarterback of that team. Mm-hmm. And if he captains that in a way that all comes together, I think that is a much better situation than potentially with the New York Jets, even though he had better pass catchers in New York. And so that's kind of my next question is, what do you expect from the Steelers now? Where would you rank the Steelers now? What does it do? When we had our Locked On NFL Network host voted power rankings, the Steelers, I think, were 20 in the NFL.
Wow. That seems low to me, but I guess if it's with Rudolph, I totally
It was with Mason Rudolph.
Right.
And so where do you think you put them now? And I think we've got to also talk about some players that could be available that could be added to the situation. So this Steelers team is probably going to look just at least slightly different, at least one more pass catcher on their way to Pittsburgh.
So the day Pickens got traded, I said, I understand it if another shoe drops. And I really think another pass catcher will be added. Like I said, I walked past Gabe Davis in the hallway yesterday. Now, I hope it's Gabe Davis or better. Like, I'm not sure Gabe Davis is enough, but it's going to be somebody that's been on fantasy teams. With Jonnu Smith, Kyle Pitts. I mean, one of these receivers that's out there, Romeo Doubs. I mean, somebody like that. I mean, I think at a minimum, you're going to have some brand name dude, maybe even bigger than that. I don't have any inkling on that, but I do. I mean, Olave's been rumored. They've called again about Ayuk again. I don't know. I mean, but I do think they'll add another receiver of note, which to me pretty much completes things. Real quick, state of the Steelers union is this team's never going to be like, we're going to trade Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and win 4 games. I mean, that's just not what they do. That goes back to Joe Green and Chuck Noll. I mean, so they're going to do everything they can to be as competitive as possible this year. And next year, they're going to draft a quarterback in the first round with the draft being in Pittsburgh. I can almost guarantee it. And in the meantime, they've fortified both lines of scrimmage with all their recent first-round picks is what they're trying to do. Young, talented offense and defensive lines to insert a quarterback next year, and they're going to try to ride the fence of maybe finally winning that playoff game this year, and making some noise. And that's the one thing I said on my local podcast here is I don't know now that they're going to beat the Chiefs in Kansas City or beat Buffalo or Baltimore or outduel Burrow, but the old guy might have one game in him. You know what I mean? He might. And it's funny because I did a Locked On NFL with Wig just an hour ago, and he beat me to it. He said, I don't have to, I forget what the quote was. It was some country song. I don't have to be as good as I once was, but I can be that good one more time. Right,
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
you'll see that you just see those flashes of greatness.
Yeah, maybe I don't need to do it all the time anymore, but I can maybe in the first round of the playoffs they don't get blow out in a wild card round,
And I would love to see some of those beautiful Aaron Rodgers deep balls to DK Metcalf. And I like what the Steelers have done with the offensive line. You got Pat Freiermuth and Darnell Washington at tight end still, which is like, I'm not sure tight end is the right fit maybe for an extra player there in pass catcher. I would maybe lean
sounds like nothing, but Donald Parham, who was supposed to be their third, blew out his Achilles 2 days ago. So all of a sudden they need a tight end. It's probably going to be some journeyman they grab off the ground. I don't think they're going to get a tight end.
And, you got Connor Hayward kind of do a little bit of everything there. But they've remade the offensive line. Zach Frazier was awesome as a rookie last year. Mason McCormick. Then, of course, the last 2 first-rounders are offensive tackles, Broderick Jones on the left side, Troy Fautanu on the right side. So you'd think that they'd be able to run the football and hopefully protect Aaron Rodgers okay, as long as those young players develop in the way that they expect going into 2025. So it's, the defense.
Najee Harris was an awful fit in the outside zone scheme too. And Caleb Johnson should be much better. I mean, just that he was not a Arthur Smith type of runner. He has no vision and he has no burst,
Yeah. And Caleb Johnson was good in that sort of a scheme.
Yeah.
Last year. And obviously,
and play better defense. I mean, that's the plan,
And defense,
really good defensive front.
You added Derek Harmon to the mix this year. You have Keanu Benton, Cam Hayward, TJ Watt. Like, this is a team that's ready to play. Patrick Queen. Slay is brought in at corner to go with Joey Porter Jr. and Minka Fitzpatrick. Like, this is a team that's ready to compete right now. Peyton Wilson, there's probably big expectations there.
Yeah, every down guy now,
right?
Yeah.
And Highsmith coming off the edge as well. So, like, there's a lot of talent there. So now it becomes playmakers catching.
Give me one more catch the ball.
Need one more guy there. Love Calvin Austin is a number 3 guy. He's got athleticism. Robert Woods, veteran journeyman guy at this point. Rowan Wilson might be a slot. Nightmare.
They still have hope for Roman, yeah.
But I would like one more playmaker and one more receiver on the outside. And I think
a legit number 2.
Yes, yeah. And I guess it
could
be
Pickens if Pickens was still there, you'd be like, whoa, this team's pretty scary.
Right. But kind of maybe too similar skill set with DK Metcalf, maybe somebody a little different. So let's talk about who that might be for the Steelers next. And there's a new name that potentially could be on the market as Terry McLaurin. Now, there's a holdout watch with the Washington Commanders, and more news and notes from around the NFL next. So this one kind of caught me off guard. I didn't expect this one in Washington. Terry McLaurin is going into the last year of his contract. Sources tell Jordan Schultz that Commanders All-Pro wide receiver Terry McLaurin has made it clear to the team he's frustrated with the lack of progress on a long-term deal. As previously reported, McLaurin unexpectedly left voluntary workouts after initially showing up at OTAs, and it remains to be seen whether he'll report for mandatory minicamp. McLaurin is entering the final year of his contract. Talks have been minimal. Should Terry McLaurin be added to the names of a list of players that maybe the Steelers are calling about and possibly trading for, Matt?
Absolutely. And Pittsburgh has a ton of cap space and a ton of future picks. They have 3/3, 2/4, 2/5, 2/6 coming with comp picks. And I think one of those is going to go for a pass catcher. My only qualm with it is if I'm Washington, I'm just giving Terry what he wants. Like, I'm in it to win it now. I got a cheap quarterback. I've invested so much in the offense. I can't let him walk out the door with all I've done to complete this offense.
The timing of this one tells me that Terry McLaurin doesn't really want to get fined and doesn't want to hold out, but this was the last moment he could, I have
one more chip to play. Yeah.
Send us another offer so I don't have to hold out and get fined during mandatory stuff, and I can show up for that.
I got 4 days between now and mandatory camp, and I'm going to show up whether I say I am or not,
Yeah, and for Washington, with the way they're built, like, he's the veteran receiver. I don't know if you'd want to do that to your young quarterback. And again, like, you got a cheap young quarterback for a while. You shouldn't have a problem signing Terry McLaurin. I know that the ownership and
third receiver.
There's a long-term view with this team and a trust the process, but they kind of arrive so quickly that I don't know if you can just be like, well, we had plans to build this another way. They brought in Deebo Samuel. They had Luke McCaffrey last year.
Yeah.
Did they bring?
I don't see enough at receiver to let McLaurin go.
Yeah, maybe you go 2 tight ends because you drafted Ben Sinnott last year, and you got Zach Ertz coming back for another year there. I don't know. I don't see it. It doesn't make sense. So I do think a deal will get done, and very unlikely that anything happens with Terry McLaurin. But again, they could be very far off on a contract, and who knows?
Yeah, they may see it different. I don't know.
We've seen this with wide receivers. Like, wide receiver money is kind of crazy, and Terry McLaurin's gonna be asking for $30-something million a year. And so maybe Washington's just like that. I just don't think that's what kind of player you are.
And he's not young. He came out of Ohio State a little older than you think, too. I mean, he's had some wear and tear. These receiver contracts are weird. And it's a side note, but the Ravens extended Bateman yesterday. And I'm like, boy, that was a steal. I think he was at $12 million, something like that, where Josh Palmer and Denami Brown and those guys are getting 10, and you get Bateman for 12, I think it was. That's great. But the McLaurins of the world are going 130.
Yeah, and McLaurin's been playing. He was like one of the first to sign his past extension kind of before that money exploded. So he's been a bargain already.
Yeah, he has. And he knows it. And this is his last chance at his age to cash in.
Right. Yeah. So I if I'm Terry McLaurin, I'm probably playing hardball as well. And so we'll see how that happens. And who knows?
I think I'd give it to him.
Yeah. And maybe there's an opportunity for the Steelers to jump in there. You mentioned Brandon Ayuk. There's, I don't know what to think of Brandon Ayuk. The story just never going to go away, even though he already signed his long-term contract. But the most likely seem like Jonnu Smith And there have been reports.
I think that's all smoke from the agent.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. But I do think Kyle Pitts could be somebody of interest.
And the report was that Kyle Pitts is available for a day 2 pick. Is that too pricey for a guy that you probably have to re-up when you do trade for him?
Too pricey. 4th.
Okay.
I mean, he's not a superstar, but maybe his best days are ahead. Arthur Smith has this Pitts-Jonnu connection like crazy. I mean, that's why they're being linked to the Steelers, which I get, but I don't know that a tight end does the trick.
Didn't Pitts kind of underwhelm with Arthur Smith though?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jonnu was really good last year, or his last year in Atlanta,
Yep. Interesting. Okay.
I mean, I've heard Olave, Christian Kirk, Romeo Dobbs, who Rodgers played with.
Dobbs makes some sense. Obviously the Packers drafted another wide receiver. They kind of have too many. They're not going to pay all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
The
He's
Packers,
up after the year.
Yeah. So Packers would certainly be a team I would call, and I think they have players that will play less for them than they would for the Steelers.
Right. Their 4 might be the Steelers 2.
Right. Whether it's Dobbs or Dontavian Wicks or whoever's now going to take a back seat because they drafted Matthew Golden.
And I think I told you that during the season, the Steelers basically had a deal in place for Christian Kirk, and then he went out and played Sunday and blew out his knee or whatever.
So if you're wondering why teams shut guys down when there's trades that happen,
right? I'm like, how'd you let that happen? Right.
That's why.
Yeah. Right. But then Houston drafted too high.
Mm-hmm. Steelers are a playoff team right now?
They kind of always are. And everyone around here is like, that's not good enough, but
are they a win a playoff game team right now today without adding anybody
else? Again, they have to go into Burrow, Lamar, Stroud. The opponents are still scary. Allen, Mahomes,
Well, they were already better than Burrow's Bengals last year.
Cincy, I don't think is a playoff team this year. I think they didn't do enough on defense. But the fact that Burrow looms is frightening.
Unless it was defensive coaching and Anarumo really was the problem. That's the big difference. They still haven't. I mean, that's still a story we should talk about with the Cincinnati Bengals. Their first round pick this is a weird situation with Shamar Stewart. He's standing there, not doing anything, but he's there, and he's in the group of people stretching but not stretching and just standing there.
Is that how that's going? I kind of wasn't sure what. You're right.
We haven't signed yet, so I'm going to be on the side, and I'm in plain clothes, and gosh, I really want to put on the uniform and go work out. He's in his jersey in the line of people stretching but not stretching,
and just standing there. That's weird. And then you mix that with the Hendrickson stuff. It's maybe your best position on defense. I mean, the interior's no better. The back seven's questionable.
Yeah, they needed to get better there. They thought they had 2 guys. Right now they have 0 guys that'll play defensive end for them.
Right. And Miles Murphy's last year's first rounder isn't real impressive,
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the Steelers a lot better where they're at now. And if they can add a pass catcher of note, I think that's their best chance in 5 years to win a playoff game, and that would go a long way. We'll see.
Can we take a second to talk about Frank Ragnow, who retired earlier?
Yeah. What a career.
I mean, unbelievable. One of the best centers of his era. He's the only NFL center to play 2,000 plus pass block snaps and allow less than 5 sacks since 2020. He's been obviously one of the best centers in the NFL since he came into the league. And that stat from the 33rd team, by the way. And here's another one from Nate Tice. And this is interesting. So the Lions obviously lost their offensive coordinator. Now they lose their, Ragnow's only 29 years old, too.
I know. He's been beat up, though.
Recently. Yeah. I mean, just such a phenomenal player. This from Nate Tice. The Lions offense in 2023, with and without center Frank Ragnow on the field. They played 755 plays with Frank Ragnow. Yards per play was 6.0. That was 3rd best in the NFL. Success rate on offense was 44.7%, which was 4th best in the NFL. And the EPA per play, which was 0.09, was tied for 2nd best in the NFL. Wow. The 182 plays without Frank Ragnow, their yards per play dropped from 3rd down to 13th in the NFL. Their success rate went from 4th to 29th in the NFL. and their EPA per play went from second in the league to negative 0.13, which was 27th in the NFL.
Wow, that's amazing. Now, I assume they had some inkling this was coming all off season. Like, I doubt they're totally shocked by it because they did. I mean, but remember, they lost Zeitler too. So, I mean, 2 interior offensive linemen. Mahogany, last year's 6th-round pick, I thought was going to battle for the Zeitler job. And then they used a pick on Tate Ratledge and Miles Frazier, also interior linemen. And I think Graham Glasnow, the right guard, could play center. I think he has a history of that. But it's kind of, you wonder, is one of the league's best O-lines taking a noticeable step backwards in the middle?
I mean, that's pretty massive.
It's pretty massive, yeah.
The Lions, and you're like, hey, the Lions really struggled this year. What happened? Well, they lost their offensive coordinator, which is generally thought of being one of the better offensive minds in the NFL, and their offensive line.
I think he took a few coaches with them, too.
Yes, and the offensive line was the dominating unit that it once was that made everything else easier for that coordinator and all the players on it, including their quarterback, who's not a top
Goff needs to be protected
quarterback in the NFL.
Mm-hmm. Not a little worried.
Yeah. That is the show. Thank you everybody for making your first listen. Aaron Rodgers, the national nightmare is over. He has signed. He is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Let us know what you think at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Get your questions.
BP, as you can imagine, I've got like 9,000 graduation parties this weekend, and everyone I meet is gonna be like, "Tell me about Aaron Rodgers."
Yeah,
and that's all I'm gonna do all weekend. Yeah.
You have to start making stuff up. It's like, I heard.
You know what he likes? Yeah.
Actually, he's been in a cave for the last 2 months. That's why he can't.
Yeah. You really want to know the real scoop? Yeah.
Hey, it's gonna be a lot of fun. Probably better that he's not in New York. Maybe
I think so.
Maybe a quieter.
I'm kind of excited about it.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch it though. I want to see how it looks. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. Subscribe on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Matt and I back Monday, right here. Peacock and Williamson.